So what does it mean when you hear the term grow in your faith? It's interesting to me. People say things all the time, and at the end I go, yeah, but how do you do that? And for me, let me give you a few of my thoughts on what it means to grow in your faith. The first thing I would say to you is, at its core, I only grow in my faith when I do hard things because I know that's what God wants me to do, even when I don't want to do it. Nobody says you have to like obeying everything God calls you to do. I'll say this. Don't email me, but listen, like doing everything God calls you to do is not always the funnest thing on the planet. Forgiving somebody who's hurt you, putting somebody else, their needs in front of your own. That's not always fun, and it's not always the greatest thing on the planet, but it is the greatest way to live your life. Why? Because it's in the hard moments of obedience that God builds your faith. Number two, I would say this, you got to trust God's timing. God's clock is different than mine. I want it now. I want a microwave kind of faith, just put it in 30 seconds, ding, it happens. God doesn't work that way. And sometimes it drives you crazy and you go, well, why haven't you moved in this area yet? Because he has a different clock than yours and he's working on a different schedule than you're working on. You want what you're asking for. He wants you. Some of his greatest work happens in the waiting. So how do you wait well? Well, number three, and most importantly for me, you got to trust God's character. What do you mean by that? Here's what I mean. At some point, I had to decide, is God a good dad who wants good things for me? Let me tell you this. You battle an anxiety disorder for 30 years. You lay in bed at night, you look at the ceiling, and you go, God, what are you doing? I don't understand this. And when I release my need for answers, which by the way, getting the answers doesn't change the situation. But when I release my need for answers and stake my life on Romans 8, that God is at work in all things for good because he loves me and he's called me, my perspective began to shift and my faith began to grow. I released the need to understand it all. I mean, I've walked through wings of children's hospitals to visit people. I've stood over the bed and performed funerals for young men and women who've died in car accidents. I mean, I've shaken my fist at heaven and go, God, you got some explaining to do. But in the end, what has gotten me through is an unshakable belief that he's a good dad and he wants good things for his kids. He just puts it in packages I would never expect. And you wonder why it's rare to find people who grow in their faith? It's because they don't trust God's character. They make demands on his timing. And they operate out of their feelings, not his truth in the moment. I didn't say it wasn't hard. I just said it was worth the journey.